doing this Saturday morning Bible study for all these years?
I was raised Jewish, very Reformed. And Orthodox Jews will walk to the synagogue on Saturday mornings in order to study the scriptures. And that's all I was really doing, was suggesting that Warner Church be the shul,
Yeah.
and that we study the scriptures, which is exactly what we've been doing.
Yeah.
And there's something, I know it's crazy, and I hated every second of it as a kid. It really did, but I love it as an adult. Another advantage of studying the Bible study, I think, is get to meet the pastoral staff. And the Tuesday prayer thing, which is also a connection event, you get to meet with all of the senior pastoral staff.
Yeah.
They're there. Yes, all you gotta do is show up.
On the other end of it, you are leading a connection event this spring.
Passover Seder, we did one 2 years ago, is absolutely good for kids. And this time we've kind of tightened it so it really will work at a schedule that will work with kids.
So it's somebody who's never been to a Passover Seder before. Why is this something to come to?
Because it happens there, it happens around Easter.
Yep.
It has Easter and Passover intertwined. The Last Supper was Passover.
What was Jesus doing with the disciples?
Passover.
He was doing a Passover meal.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing.
that's what we're doing. To me, Jesus and Passover and communion are in many ways synonymous.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one.
That's good. And if you want to have a moment where you are literally walking in Jesus' steps, celebrate Passover.
Yeah. So
We did it.
we did it. We did it.
Yeah.
I hope that's.
So we're focusing this month on inviting people to lead and participate in connection groups. So if you go to corner.church/groups, you can learn more about that. It doesn't have to be some big grandiose thing. It can literally just be an invitation to get together weekly or monthly or a couple times a month at your house, at a coffee shop, for a meal, something like that. But intentional invitation to participate in community is so valuable and important. We're going to take a minute to do our connection card and offering and prayer requests. We're a church that prays with and for one another. Easier to do that when we know what to pray for and with. And so if you write those things down, just like Dick was saying, on Tuesday, there's a group of us that get together and pray for these things out loud together. It's a great practice that we have. And so take a minute, write a prayer request down, refill your coffee, grab some of those, what would you call those, Meredith? The things you made?
I don't know what it is.
It's like a puff pastry with cheese and caramelized onion.
Yep.
So
Well,
good.
pastry, cheese, caramelized
Yeah.
onion.
So get some of that. Hot honey,
It wasn't very hot, but it was kind of heating up.
Midwest hot honey. So take a minute, do those, and we'll jump into 1 Kings in a moment. Good job.
Oh, thanks. Oh, that was awful.
That was terrible.
That was terrible.
Wow. She's really bad at that. Yeah. We only got some about you. As long as it's in front of you, it's fine.
There's gonna be a fight.
Fight?
And apparently I
All right, we're going to jump into our conversation. We are continuing week 2 of 1 Kings. We started it last week. A brief overview of kind of just what happens in this book. It's the end of David's reign as king. Solomon takes over. It's a lot about him asking God for wisdom. He builds the temple, and Israel kind of hits this high point of their nation. There's a lot of unity, a lot of blessing. But towards the end of the book, we see this prosperity starts to erode things. Things start to become worse. Solomon's heart is pulled towards idolatry, and eventually the kingdom breaks apart and splits. And by the end of the book, God raises up the prophet Elijah to confront the corrupt kings and call the nation back to God. So much happens in this book, and there's a lot that happens in this book, and there's a lot that's happening in us and around us and in our own lives right now. Think of all of the different pressures people in this room might be experiencing. Media overload. Kelsey and I and the couple were joking this morning that there was a video we saw where this guy says we need to run a 5K for unawareness. So we know, almost like we know too much that's going on all the time. There's media overload. There's moments of reevaluating work and purpose. Feeling financially stretched, maybe caring for aging parents, maybe a sense of loneliness despite living in the city and being constantly connected to people, mental and emotional health, longing for something solid to hold on to. It's pretty similar to a lot of the stories that we're reading in 1 Kings. We bring that all to the table, and right in the middle of it, today's text puts 3 foundations in front of us. It's the call that David gives his son as he's about to pass away. He tells Solomon, there's a call for maturity, a call for obedience, and a call for faithfulness. Not as a fix for life's chaos, but as something to build on while we're in it. So here's where we're at in the story. David is at the end of his life. Solomon has just been established as the next king. Though it wasn't smooth. Last week we talked about Adonijah trying to claim the throne for himself and the complications of that. Solomon showed grace. He spared his life, but that tension, the family is still there. And underneath all of this, there's this theme we're going to keep coming back to throughout 1 King, is this idea that's called hope amidst failure. Even in the mess of human leadership, God remains faithful to his covenant. We can have hope. And that's been the pattern from the beginning. When Israel's first asked for a king, the prophet Samuel tells them, if you guys get a king, if you get what you're asking for, you're going to cry out for relief. The king's just going to take advantage of you. The Lord won't answer you when you call. People thought they knew better. In 1 Samuel 8, they said, no, we want a king. We want to be like the nations around us. They wanted a king anyway. And so from that point, we're roughly 80 years later in 1 Kings, and we're watching the third king take the throne. The first was Saul. Things started well with Saul, but he ended up acting out of fear and control rather than trust, and so God ended up rejecting his leadership. David was the second, known as a man after God's own heart, but also a man that was deeply flawed. God made an everlasting covenant with him, promising a future king from his line, and that's where Israel's hope for a Messiah begins to take root. And now we're at the third king, Solomon. He's established as the king. He's gracious towards his brother. Next week, we'll see him ask God for wisdom. But today, before any of that, David gives Solomon this charge, and it comes down to three things: maturity, obedience, and faithfulness. They're communicated as expectations for his son. And that's where I want us to start today. Before we dig into the text, we're going to try to get to a shared starting point, shared conversation. The purpose of dialogue at Corner Church is to connect with us, connect with each other, connect with what we're processing, and to pull us into a conversation rather than just being observers of it. And so a couple things to help stay on topic. Time goes fast. We only have so much time. And then the next strategy is focus on being interested in what others are saying rather than being interesting to everyone around you. So first dialogue question: where in life have you navigated unspoken expectations, and what has been the impact of that?
That's stereotype. They call it, yeah, that's something that, and like, I'm not always, like, All right, just a second more on this. Finish up that last thought. We're going to continue on expectations. Expectations are interesting. There's a lot of good things about expectations, and there's actually some bad things about expectations, or can be. The good part of expectations is they can create clarity. They can build trust. If you know what's predictable, it's easier to trust. They can shape culture. When a group embraces a shared expectation, it can build understanding and perspective. But there's also a negative side to expectations. They can become dangerous for a few reasons. When they're unspoken, that can be tough. When anger or disappointment builds over something that was never actually communicated. When they're unrealistic, when a standard can't realistically be met, and yet you hold that expectation for somebody else. When they replace grace, when the more expectations I share, the less gracious I am when they're not met. When they're about control, when expectations aren't shared to reveal what's valuable and important, but to confine somebody. And when they're confused with identity, when missing someone else's expectation is habitually internalized as personal failure, it can shape identity. And so let's process that for a moment. Couple questions. What do you think is more prominent in your life? Frustration from unspoken expectations or frustration from unhealthy expectations? And how do those frustrations impact relationships in your world?
I don't want to put people really pressure. But then I have.
All right, 3 quick moments of Jesus exploding the expectations of the people around him. The first, Mark places this one at the very first page of his book in Mark 1. A man with leprosy comes to Jesus and he begs on his knees, if you're willing, you can make me clean. Now, in Jesus' world, in that time, leprosy brought about forced isolation, right? It was a public identification of unclean. Separation from worship, separation from family, separation from normal life, and touching an unclean person made you also unclean. And in that moment, Jesus reached out his hand, he touched the man, he said, I am willing, be clean. It wasn't expected. That touch told this man that he belongs, that he's seen, that he's not defined by his conditions, that there's something in that story for all of us, that our issues don't repel Jesus, but he leans into those. A second moment of a expectation that Jesus exploded. This was about who you were allowed to share a meal with. Early in Jesus' public ministry, he walks past a tax collector named Levi. He doesn't avoid eye contact. In fact, he invites himself over to Levi's house for a meal. Levi throws a banquet. The room fills with tax collectors and sinners. And the Pharisees, the one that have these high expectations, they lose it. They say, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? Now, at that time, tax collectors were viewed as they were the collaborators with Rome, with the empire. They were known for corruption. They were viewed as traitors. And in that culture, who you ate with said something about who you were and who you valued. Eating together meant acceptance and solidarity and relationship. The Pharisees expected holiness to be maintained by separation, that righteousness was to be protected by distance. And Jesus responds in that moment. He said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Jesus doesn't just see our brokenness as something to create distance. It pulls him closer. Third, Jesus is celebrating Passover, Seder, with his disciples. It's their last one together. And in the middle of this familiar, predictable meal, he does something unexpected. In John 13, Jesus gets up from the meal. He takes off his outer garment. He wraps a towel around his waist, and he starts to wash his disciples' feet. Peter pushes back because that was radically outside of his expectations of who would even be allowed to touch his feet. Foot washing was a lowly task, never done by the most important or greatest person in the room. And just before this, in Luke 22, the disciples had just been arguing about who was the greatest in Jesus' kingdom. Peter says, Lord, you'll never wash my feet. And Jesus responds to that saying, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. The one who had every right to be served choose to be the one to serve. I think about what it means for us as we connect with God, that Jesus doesn't just call us to serve him, he serves us, and that being Christ-like means that our call is to serve others. So as we put these things together, Jesus touching the leper, dining with Levi, and washing the disciples' feet, they're beautiful, unexpected moments, and we're called to be Christ-like. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did, 1 John 2:6. So as a person seeks to be Christ-like, how does or would your local, the people around you, respond to these maybe unexpected attributes being lived out? Care, unconditional love, and humility. Huh? Was Jesus considered the enemy? I mean, they crucified him eventually. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
All this is so
All right, we're going to take these moments back to our story in 1 Kings. Solomon had just been ordained as the next king. Don't forget the chaos that happened in chapter 1. But now David, before his death, he gives this charge to Solomon. I'm going to read it. It says, I'm about to go the way of the earth, but you, be strong, show what you're made of, do what God tells you, walk in the path he shows you, follow the life map absolutely. Keep an eye out for the signposts. His course for life is set out in the revelation to Moses. Then you'll get on well in whatever you do and wherever you go. So we're going to look at these 3 things that David charged Solomon with. The first is be strong, be mature. It's easy to think be strong and think aggressive, explosive, combative. But I think one of the most compelling pictures of strength and maturity is Jesus actually in the Garden of Gethsemane. After the Last Supper, Jesus goes to pray. Luke tells that he withdrew from his disciples. He knelt down in anguish and prayed earnestly, so much so that his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. And that prayer that he prayed, he said, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. Strength here is setting aside his own personal will, clinging to God's will. And then Judas arrives with a mob to arrest him. And one of the disciples cuts off a man's ear. And Jesus responds, no more of this. And he touched and healed the man. He heals one of the people who came to take him away. So strength and maturity, not in aggression, but in grace and peace and healing. So question coming out of that, what are some of the keys to being a person of Christ-like strength and maturity?
He is called to show anxious matters that she doesn't ask.
You was every year. When I was hanging out, Monday year was like trying to defend him. And then my first year,
For sure.
There was 3 days after that, and the entire was
The next charge that David gives Solomon is to be obedient. I think it's easy to be like, yeah, I'll do that if it makes life a little bit easier, if it's advantageous, if it elevates me, if it keeps me from pain. But I think one of the clearest pictures of obedience is when Jesus is tempted after fasting for 40 days. In Matthew 4, the Spirit leads Jesus into the wilderness, and after 40 days and nights of fasting, the devil comes and tempts him. He was hungry. He was tempted with bread. Tell these stones to become bread. He was hurting and wanting God's care and tempted to force God's hand. Throw yourself down and let the angels catch you. He was alone and unseen and tempted with power and authority. All the kingdoms of the world, if you bow down, I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world if you bow down and worship me. And I can feel the rationale in each of these things. They're not absurd temptations. They're deeply human. And each time Jesus holds his ground with Scripture and says, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Jesus demonstrates obedience even when it would have been easier not to. So what are some keys to being a person that is obedient to God even when it comes at a price?
I know. Just because you're actually so everyone knows
Where are you going?
So what's the key? It's because you walk with God for a very long time. You just continue to ask him.
But now you're going to lock him in.
Yeah, some of the keys is encourage faith. You never have to.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to lock that door. Have a good one, bro. Oops. All right, and the last thing that David charges Solomon with is to be faithful. Jesus points us to the greatest commandments, and what's striking to me is how simple they are. Matthew 22, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, love people. Let that be the foundation. And faithfulness is staying committed to that. In Philippians 2, Paul marvels at what Jesus' faithfulness actually looked like. He writes that Jesus, being in very nature God, didn't consider equality with God something to be used as his own advantage. Instead, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. Philippians 2. Christ had every right to cling to his divine status, but he didn't. He chose humility over privilege. He entered human likeness. He lived as one of us. He humbled himself completely. Jesus was faithful to God and to us all the way through. So, question, what are some of the keys to being faithful in our love to God and for people.
Right, and balancing.
Have a good day.
This is logic.
I'm going to move us to our last dialogue question. After David gives these challenges, these invites to Solomon, he then declares that there's blessing if you follow through, if you do these things. And whenever we talk about blessing, it always pulls me back to the Beatitudes. In the midst of life's chaos, both what they were experiencing then and what we're experiencing now, we've been looking at these foundations to be strong and mature, to be obedient, to be faithful. And if we do those things, that we will be blessed. I want us to close by reading Jesus' words on blessing, Matthew 5. I'm going to read it. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. We started today with expectations, the spoken ones, the hidden ones, the impact of those. We watched Jesus have these moments of blowing open other people's expectations for him through unconditional love and care and humility. We sat with the foundation that David gives Solomon about strength and obedience and faithfulness, and ending with blessing. Jesus keeps changing, exploding. If you think you have them all figured out, get ready, because it's all about the change, right? And the blessing he describes here isn't for external. It's not about really what we get or what we represent. It's not what we receive from the outside. It's what starts to form on the inside of us. So one more question. What is the blessing for being strong and mature and obedient and faithful? I'm going to pray and give you some time to talk. Will you pray with me? God, I thank you for today. I pray these things, that where we're confused, where we've confused strength with control, teach us a strength that actually trusts. Where obedience has felt costly or unclear, help us take the next faithful step anyway. where faithfulness feels ordinary or unseen, remind us that you are present in this long work of love that you've called us to. Form something steady in us, not driven by fear or shaped by comparison, but rooted in humility, trust, and care for others. Meet us here, lead us forward. In your name we pray. Amen.